Guys, if I'm being completely honest with you, I am scared. I am petrified with what I've seen from the McLaren from testing, how confident they look, how confident they sound when they talk. On day 2 of testing, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, and Khvn Antonelli did an entire race sim. 2 stops, everything. Lando Norris finished 30 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc, who finished 2 seconds ahead of Khvn Antonelli. McLaren look absolutely ridiculous, scarily dominant. And that's why I come here to tell you guys that the person that I think is going to win the 2025 World Drivers' Championship is Charles Leclerc. You thought I was going to say Lando Norris, didn't you? Of course not. Charles Leclerc's the second best driver on the grid, and Max Verstappen does not have the car to battle him. It's that simple. Charles Leclerc is the only person that could go toe-to-toe with Max Verstappen in similar machinery, and he doesn't have to this season. Charles Leclerc's winning it. It's said here, and I cannot wait to look back at this in a couple of months.
I still want to have to say it. Max Verstappen, he could become the first person to equal Michael Schumacher's 5 championship wins in a row. For the sake of this, going against Luther, I will say Max Verstappen wins his 5th in a row, equaling Michael Schumacher's record. Charles Leclerc in 2nd, Hamilton 3rd, mainly because 2 number 1s at Ferrari and McLaren will cause a tornado.
So after the long winter, the F1 cars have been on the track, and we're just around the corner from the start of the actual season. We kind of know who's going to be good and who's not. So it's time that we give you our predictions. I want to start with the negative. Who will be at the back of the grid? Who will be the worst team? Who will be the worst driver?
I feel bad for Gabriel Bortoleto because he won both F3 and F2 in his rookie season. Only because Hadjar stalled.
Yeah, so we lost him early on. We were so prepared to see that battle, and this is it. The championship stalls out.
But he's going into the worst team, so unfortunately for him, he'd have to do maybe like a Charles Leclerc season. A few bad boy races maybe where he tries and gets into the points. And it's like, wow, we're really impressed with Bortoleto. He's clearly above Sauber. But for me, it's definitely Sauber at the bottom.
I couldn't agree more with what Yanni just said. People are talking about Andrea Khvn Antonelli as this potentially generational driver. I think Khvn Antonelli has a ton of potential. But Gabi Bortoleto is the generational driver in this crop of rookies. He is the one with the highest ceiling. He is a brilliant racer. And he's at the worst team in the worst car on the grid. Gabi Bortoleto clearly is what Audi want to lead them into the future. That's going to take some convincing for him to want to be there for Audi to help them go into the future.
Well, I mean, guys, look no further than who I believe will be the most surprising driver from this year's F1. And there he is. Yes, okay. He hasn't won any of the F2s or F3s that he joined. He may have been drafted in too early. But my God, I thank every day for Sergio Perez's demise. That Isaac Hadjar is in here, and I get to watch the first Arabic driver, although there was a Qatari driver that did a testing back in 2005, 2006. But generally, guys, we are witnessing history with Hadjar, the first Arabic driver on the Formula 1 grid. I generally think that he will be a big surprise.
Unfortunately, once again, I have to agree with Yanni. Isaac Hadjar is probably going to be the most surprising. Surprisingly shit. I'm going to go with someone that got a podium right at the end of last season. He looked in form, Pierre Gasly. I think Alpine have a much better car than they had at this point last year. They're in a much more stable place. Unfortunately, their livery is fucking disgusting compared to what it was last year. Hair transplant Gasly. Hair transplant Gasly. Hair transplant. Hair transplant. Okay. Hair transplant Gasly. Okay, wait. Hair transplant Gasly is going to come in and revive the form that he had back in 2021 in his last few seasons with AlphaTauri. I think he's going to be brilliant, and I think he's going to be back again in the points very often for Alpine. And I cannot wait, because him on his day, brilliant driver. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of his days this season in a good car.
Watch out for George Russell, because as him as the leader of Mercedes, I genuinely think he will surprise a lot of people who don't actually rate him. But generally, I think George Russell will do very well. When he was the lead driver at Williams, in a shit car for Williams, he performed. He outperformed that car. With Mercedes, when he's the lead driver, how he will do, I don't think he has expectations the way that Charles Leclerc or Hamilton does, or Verstappen. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, these drivers have expectation. George Russell does not.
A few weeks ago, we did our video on who we thought would be the biggest contenders, the people that had a realistic chance at winning the championship this season. That day, we talked about 4 people: Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, and Lando Norris. Unfortunately, the person that's getting kicked out in my predictions is Lewis Hamilton. In third place, I have a person who I think is by far the best driver on the grid right now. I just think that he is driving for a team that is so far behind schedule. He has a car that clearly looks very difficult to drive still, and that's Max Verstappen.
The biggest disappointment for me will be Oscar Piastri. If he simply does not live up to the expectations of him having a higher ceiling than Lando Norris, if he does not challenge Lando Norris for the top spot, Oscar Piastri, I'm sorry, I can no longer support you. You have been a disappointment. Last season was a disappointment. Please don't let it happen again.
He has to close the gap to Lando Norris. He cannot get 20 to Ford in qualifying again. That can't happen. It needs to be a 10 to 12 to 14. That's the math. Sorry, that's wrong. And I just don't believe he's going to do it. I was his biggest supporter when we first started this channel. My confidence in Oscar Piastri is gone. It's not the same. On top of that, I do think there's a lot of talk about Khvn Antonelli being this Verstappen S prospect. I don't see that happening. I do think he's going to have really serious growing pains. Verstappen won the first time he had a decent car. And I just don't imagine Khvn Antonelli is going to be that person.